Hello everybody and welcome back once again to another edition of Nintendo Power Time Machine. This time we're taking a look at Volume 60 from May of 1994, featuring Super Metroid on the front cover. Without further ado, let's take a look at the table of contents and get on with our first article. It's finally here. After months of grueling hype, Super Metroid was finally being released, and this game would go on to disappoint absolutely no one. The article spans 12 pages and is almost a complete guide to the game in and of itself, featuring layouts of each area, tips on fighting the bosses, and where each and every one of those ridiculously hidden power-ups is located. It's an amazing adventure of a game for both completionists and speedrunners alike, and it would go on to become one of the greatest games for the Super Nintendo and would set the stage for many more Metroid games to come. Our next feature is The King of Dragons, a fun side-scrolling beat-em-up much in the same style of Final Fight, but with a D&D style level-up system to it. The article covers little bits of all 16 levels of the game, with a sentence or two on each level boss. You can choose from any of 5 classes, including an elf who has fast movement speed and a long-range attack, despite not being very defensive. The wizard, who has a mid-range attack and loses less health when using his magic attack than other classes. A fighter, whom is the strongest in the game, of course. A cleric who is both proficient as a fighter and a wizard, but not the best at either. And a dwarf, who is quite strong as well, and quick at the same time. It is a solid game, and I found the level up system to be quite enjoyable, although it is much more fun to be played with a friend. Next up we have Joe and Mac 2, Lost in the Tropics. A sequel to the original, released on both the NES and Super NES, the second installment differentiates itself by including an open world, where you can choose which level you want to play next, an item shop where you can buy power-ups and even renovate your hut if you have the extra money for such pointlessness. The game even includes vehicles in some of the levels, and the boss battles are just as enjoyable as in the original game, as no one boss is the same as any other, causing you to use a certain degree of strategy on each and every boss you come across. Moving right along, we have the Jetsons, Invasion of the Planet Pirates, and oh my god, I thought that Time Tracks had a lot of items, but this is just ridiculous. Alright, so the gimmick of this game is that you're George Jetson, and you have a vacuum for whatever reason. We use it to fight off enemies, move ourselves around the stage by clinging to the walls and ceiling, and we pick up food, not to increase our health, but as points. Makes sense to me. All of this leads up to our inevitable fight with a giant monkey, which I'm sure you are all looking forward to. But seriously, I cannot believe I played this game for so long. Someone just stop this crazy thing! Next up, Sir Charles is bringing basketball back to the streets in his new game, Shut Up and Jam. It is more or less an NBA Jam clone, only not as good, due mostly in part to the subpar gameplay and Charles Barkley being the only actual NBA star in the game. Besides, we all know that it was actually the Looney Tunes, not Charles Barkley, that brought b-ball back to the streets. This section on sports games also breaks down 15 different baseball games, making it easier for gamers to pick out exactly what they want in their game. It also briefly talks about the game Suzuka 8 Hour, which is quite an entertaining and often overlooked game in the motorcycle racing genre. Oh, Spectre, what can I say about you, other than you're an early attempt at 3D battling? You start by choosing 1 of 3 battlecraft, or you make your own custom craft. You navigate around an arena and you try to collect 4 flags before moving on to the next stage. I'll give him an A for effort on this one, but to be honest, it's not a very fun game, and they usually end up in a face-to-face shootout with the enemies, eliminating all strategy from the game. We would unfortunately have to wait another couple years before we would see this concept pulled off properly on the N64. On to Knights of the Round. Wait a minute, didn't I just talk about this game? Anyways, you got 3 characters to choose from, Arthur, Lancelot, and Percival, aka the balanced guy, the quick guy, and the strong guy. The game does play a lot like King of the Dragons did, and it was also released by Capcom. It's a side-scrolling game, and there's also a level-up system to it. The major difference is that you can defend in this game, making it a bit more strategic when you go into battle. This also means, however, that the game is a bit more difficult. And if I had to choose one, I would have to go with King of Dragons, strictly because of how easy it was to pick up and play. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the winners of the 1993 Nintendo Power Awards. You may remember that in Nintendo Power Time Machine number 3, I discussed the nominees for these awards, and now without further ado, let's get to the winners themselves. In the category of Best Graphics and Best Sound, our winners are Star Fox for the Super NES, Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and Mega Man 5 for the NES. In the category of Theme and Fun, the winners are Secret of Mana for the Super NES, Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and Mega Man 5 for the NES. As far as challenge is concerned, the winners are Star Fox for the Super NES, Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and Mega Man 5 for the NES. You can start to see a pattern here. As far as play control is concerned, the winners are Street Fighter II Turbo, beating out Star Fox for the Super NES, Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and Mega Man 5 for the NES. The award for Best Hero was a bit of a shocker, as Kirby takes first place, the Lost Vikings take second, and poor Link will have to settle for third this year. The winner for Best Villain reminds you that this is the 1993 Power Awards, as Goro takes first place, Dr. Wily takes second, and Darth Vader takes third. The winner for Most Innovative Super Nintendo Game goes to the strategy game The Lost Vikings, while Super Bomberman takes second and the underrated Shadowrun takes third. In the category of Best Sports Game, basketball beats football and football beats hockey. And the award for Best Overall Super Nintendo Game goes to Mortal Kombat. Second place goes to the great RPG Secret of Mana, and as a bit of a surprise, third place goes to the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, which managed to beat out not only Super Mario All-Stars, but also Star Fox to take third. Best overall Game Boy game goes not too surprisingly to Link's Awakening. Second place goes to Mega Man 4, and third place goes to Yoshi's Cookie. And finally, our best overall NES game goes to RC Pro-Am 2, a very great racing game for the NES. Second place goes to Battletoads and Double Dragon, and third place goes to Kirby's Adventure. Next up is a preview for the Super Game Boy, which for the first time would allow gamers to play their Game Boy games on a much larger screen, and even more awesome was that they could be played in color. It featured a palette of 64 colors and combos to customize, and this accessory would help to innovate the Game Boy itself, and a few years down the line we would eventually see the Game Boy Color. Our last article of the issue is on Bonk's Adventure for the NES. The articles are pretty standard fare for any platform game. It covers the 5 levels and bosses in each of them, but what makes Bonk's Adventure really noteworthy is that it's one of the last dozen or so NES games to be made, and nowadays can retail for as much as $70 to $100. The Players Poll contest this month is Shut Up and Jam with Charles Barkley. The grand prize winner gets a chance to go one-on-one with Sir Charles himself, an autographed basketball and sneakers, and gets to go to Disney World, like any real winner should. Well, that about does it for this issue. Join me next time when I take a look at Volume 61 from June of 1994. We'll talk about some other great Super Nintendo games and previews of things to come. And as a special bonus, can you guess the ending screen to all of these games? Leave comments below letting me know, and I will see you guys next time on Nintendo Power Time Machine.